Did you know that horses can sleep standing up, but they dream only when lying down? Or that in medieval Europe, people believed a horse's tail hair left in water too long would turn into a snake? Horses aren't just beautiful animals, they're living mysteries. Their history, biology, and the strange beliefs people built around them are packed with surprises. So let's dive into some of the weirdest, most provocative facts about horses, facts you probably never knew. The story of horses doesn't start in green pastures or medieval castles. It begins in dense forests, 55 million years ago, with a tiny creature called Eohippus. About the size of a small dog, it had 4 toes on its front feet, 3 on the back, and looked more like a rabbit with hooves than a horse. Fast forward through millions of years of evolution, and you get the sleek, powerful animals we know today. But even in human history, horses weren't always what you think. Knights charging into battle in movies usually ride massive, armored beasts. In reality, most medieval war horses were closer in size to modern ponies, small, compact, and sturdy enough to carry a man in armor, but still agile in a fight. The Mongols built the largest empire in history almost entirely on horseback. A single warrior often had 4 or 5 horses, switching mounts throughout the day to cover enormous distances. Their cavalry could travel up to 100 miles in a day, an insane advantage in warfare. And here's a darker detail. In 17th century France, it was believed that drinking a horse's blood could cure epilepsy. A brutal superstition, but one that shows how deeply horses were tied to human imagination and survival. Here's something you might not expect. Horses can't vomit. Their digestive system is built like a one-way valve, which means once food goes in, it can't come back out. That's why colic, essentially stomach pain or blockage, can be deadly. Their eyes are also extraordinary. Horses have the largest eyes of any land mammal, and they can see almost 350 degrees around them. It's like having built-in rear-view mirrors. But the trade-off is strange. They're technically colorblind. They see blues and greens well, but can't distinguish red. Ever wondered how they nap on their feet? They use something called the stay apparatus, a unique system of tendons and ligaments that locks their legs like a kickstand. They can doze while standing, ready to bolt if danger comes. But to enter REM sleep, the stage where dreams happen, they have to lie down. Yes, horses dream, and don't underestimate their minds. Studies show that horses have memories as sharp as elephants. They can recognize a person's face years later, remember complex training, and even pick up on human emotions through subtle cues like tone of voice or body posture. Across cultures, horses became more than animals. They were symbols of power, mystery, and sometimes fear. In Norse mythology, Odin's horse Sleipnir had 8 legs and could gallop between worlds, a beast so powerful it blurred the line between life and death. In Celtic folklore, the Kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit, appeared as a horse to lure victims into lakes and drown them. Romans hung horsehair above their doors, believing it kept evil spirits away. And the tradition of nailing a horseshoe above your doorway for good luck? That comes from the idea that iron itself was magical and could scare off witches. But superstition didn't stop there. For centuries, horse skulls were sometimes buried under the floors of new houses in parts of Europe, a ritual meant to protect the home and bring good fortune. Even today, the echo of these beliefs survives in rural traditions. When you think of the fastest animals on land, the cheetah usually takes the crown. But did you know horses aren't far behind? The world record for the fastest horse sprint is held by a thoroughbred named Winning Brew, who reached nearly 44 miles per hour in 2008. That's faster than most cars driving through a city street. But speed isn't the only area where horses break records. The oldest horse ever recorded, a barge horse in England named Old Billy, lived to the astonishing age of 62 years in the late 1700s. To put that in perspective, The average lifespan of a horse today is around 25 to 30 years. Old Billy lived twice as long as his peers, and his skull is still preserved in a museum as proof of his longevity. On the other side of the spectrum, let's talk size. 2 hands high, that's over 7 feet at the shoulder. Imagine walking into a stable and finding yourself staring at a horse taller than most NBA players. Then there's the smallest. A tiny dwarf horse named Thumbelina holds the title of the smallest horse in history, standing at just 17 inches tall and weighing 57 pounds, about the size of a medium dog. As for sheer population, horses are everywhere. There are an estimated 60 million horses in the world today, but here's the kicker. Almost all of them are descendants of domesticated stock. The only true wild horse species left is the Przewalski's horse of Mongolia, short, stocky, with a spiky mane, and considered a living fossil. Every other so-called wild horse, like American Mustangs or Australian Brumbies, are technically feral. Their ancestors were once domesticated and later returned to the wild. And if you've ever wondered how much a horse eats, here's a shocking number. The average horse consumes about 20 pounds of food per day and drinks 5-10 gallons of water. Multiply that by 60 million horses, and you begin to realize just how much these animals have shaped ecosystems, agriculture, and even human settlement patterns. If there's one thing history proves, it's that humans have always found strange ways to use, and sometimes abuse, horses. Take clever hands, for example. In early 1900s Germany, this horse became world famous for supposedly being able to solve math problems, and Hans would tap his hoof 5 times. Crowds were convinced he was a genius animal capable of arithmetic. But scientists eventually discovered the truth. Hans wasn't doing math, he was reading microexpressions. His owner and even the audience would unconsciously relax their posture or facial tension as Hans neared the correct answer. In other words, clever Hans wasn't a math imitician. He was a master at reading humans. But human-horse interactions get weirder. Did you know horsehair was once a common material in everyday life? It was used to stuff sofas, mattresses, and even plaster walls. To this day, high-quality violin bows are strung with horsehair, often from the tails of white stallions, which is thought to produce the cleanest sound. So if you've ever listened to a soulful violin solo, chances are you've literally been hearing horsehair sing. History is full of famous horses with stories as dramatic as their riders. Napoleon Bonaparte's Arabian horse, Marengo, carried him through multiple battles, including Waterloo. After Napoleon's defeat, Marengo was taken to England, and today his skeleton is still displayed in London. Imagine walking past Napoleon's fallen warhorse, reduced to bones, yet still part of history's narrative. And then there's food. As taboo as it sounds in some cultures, horse meat has been widely consumed across the globe. In parts of Europe, particularly France and Belgium, eating horse is considered normal, even a delicacy. In Kazakhstan, fermented horse milk called kumis has been a staple drink for centuries. It's tangy, slightly alcoholic, and believed to have health benefits. What's sacred in one culture can be dinner or medicine in another. One more curious fact. In the 19th century, horses were used to power treadmills. Not the kind you run on at the gym, but massive wooden contraptions that drove industrial machines like grain mills and pumps. A horse would walk endlessly on the treadmill, generating power long before electricity became common. Yes, the original treadmill wasn't for humans, it was for horses. From pretending to solve math problems to ending up inside a violin or powering an early machine, horses have been woven into the strangest corners of human life. For most of history, the horse wasn't just transportation, it was a weapon. Without horses, many empires wouldn't have existed. The image of a charging cavalry terrified armies for centuries, and the bond between warrior and horse was often seen as sacred. But here's a surprising truth. Most cavalry horses weren't the towering giants Hollywood loves to show. The destriers, massive war horses, did exist, but they were rare and expensive. Most knights and soldiers rode compact, tough horses closer in size to modern ponies, agile enough to weave through battle lines, yet strong enough to carry an armored rider. Symbolically, the horse became a political and military tool, too. Even statues carry hidden meanings. You've probably heard the myth. If a rider's statue shows the horse with both front legs raised, the rider died in battle. If one leg is raised, they died of wounds. And if all four legs are on the ground, they died naturally. While historians point out this rule doesn't consistently hold true, it's fascinating how deeply horses became tied to storytelling in stone. In mythology, horses were equally powerful symbols. The Greeks gave us Pegasus, the winged horse who soared into the heavens. In Hindu tradition, Kalki, the final avatar of Vishnu, is prophesied to arrive riding a white horse, bringing the end of the current age of darkness. The Norse had Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed, who could travel between realms. For many cultures, the horse wasn't just an animal, it was a bridge between worlds, carrying humans from life to death, from earth to the divine. But horses also carried very real consequences in war. When Spanish conquistadors brought horses to the Americas in the 16th century, native populations who had never seen them thought the rider and horse were one being. Some even believed they were monsters. This psychological shock gave the Spanish a devastating advantage. Within decades, however, indigenous peoples like the Comanche and Lakota mastered horsemanship themselves, becoming some of the most formidable riders in history. And then there's the bond between soldiers and their mounts. Many wartime diaries mention soldiers weeping more for their fallen horses than for fellow comrades. Horses weren't just tools of war, they were companions who carried men into chaos and, sometimes, carried them home. From battlefield myths carved in stone to real battles won and lost on their backs, horses have shaped human conflict more than almost any other animal. The more you learn about horses, the stranger they become. Beneath their graceful image lies a biology full of quirks and hidden abilities. For starters, horses are excellent swimmers. Their natural buoyancy and powerful legs allow them to cross rivers and even swim for miles if necessary. Wild horses on the outer banks of North Carolina are known to swim between islands to find new grazing land. Imagine standing on the beach and seeing a herd of horses cutting through the waves like dolphins. Another odd fact: horses have one of the most sensitive hearing ranges of any domesticated animal. Each of their ears can rotate 180 degrees independently, giving them radar-like awareness. They don't just hear sounds, they locate them with pinpoint accuracy. Combine that with their near-minus 350-degree vision, and it's almost impossible to sneak up on a horse. But what makes them truly fascinating is how emotionally tuned in they are. Horses can read human body language and emotions with surprising precision. Experiments show that if a person approaches a horse with anger or frustration, the horse's heart rate increases, even if the human hasn't made a sound. They're like four-legged lie detectors, picking up what you feel before you say a word. Their communication with each other is equally sophisticated. While humans mostly notice whinnies and neighs, horses actually use a rich system of subtle cues, ear position, nostril flares, even slight shifts in body weight to send messages across the herd. A flick of an ear can mean "watch out," while a lowered head might signal trust. Then there's their sense of touch. The whiskers on a horse's muzzle aren't just decoration, they're sensitive tactile organs that help them explore the world, much like a cat's whiskers. In fact, in some countries, trimming a horse's whiskers is now banned because it's considered cruel to remove such an important sensory tool. And here's a quirky bit. Horses have more bones in their legs than humans do in their entire arms. Their anatomy is a marvel of evolution, built for speed and endurance. But despite all that strength, their legs are also their greatest vulnerability. A broken leg in a horse is often fatal, not because the injury itself is always life-threatening, but because their weight and physiology make long-term recovery nearly impossible. Perhaps the strangest thing of all is that horses, unlike most animals, can't burp, can't vomit, and can't breathe through their mouths. Their digestive and respiratory systems are built with strict one-way valves, efficient for survival, but it also makes them fragile in ways you'd never expect from such powerful animals. In short, horses are a paradox. Strong yet delicate, silent yet deeply expressive, independent yet attuned to human emotion. Their biology is as mysterious as their history. For all their beauty, horses have also lived in the shadows of human superstition, taboo, and exploitation. Take diet, for example. In many cultures, eating horse meat is considered unthinkable, even scandalous. In the United States and the UK, the very idea sparks outrage. Yet in countries like France, Belgium, Italy, and Kazakhstan, horse meat is a long-standing delicacy. In fact, during food shortages in 19th century France, the government actively promoted horse meat as a cheap, nutritious alternative to beef. And to this day, kumis, fermented horse milk, remains a traditional drink in Central Asia, believed to boost health and stamina. What one culture reveres, another consumes. Then there are the darker traditions. In parts of medieval Europe, horse skulls were sometimes buried beneath the floors of homes or churches. People believed the skull's resonance would improve acoustics and drive away evil spirits. Others thought burying horse bones under thresholds brought luck. It's a macabre reminder of how deeply horses were tied to folk magic. Even in warfare, the treatment of horses could be shocking. During World War I, millions of horses were sent to the front lines. They hauled artillery, carried soldiers, and endured conditions as brutal as the men beside them. Most never returned. In fact, of the 1 million horses sent from Britain alone, only about 60,000 came back. The rest were killed in combat, died from disease, or were sold as meat overseas. To this day, war memorials across Europe honor not only fallen soldiers, but their horses. And while we often romanticize horses as noble companions, history shows we haven't always treated them that way. In the 19th century, urban horses pulling carriages and trolleys faced grueling, dangerous lives. In New York City alone, hundreds of horses dropped dead in the streets each year from exhaustion, accidents, or disease. The smell of rotting horse carcasses was such a problem that newspapers called it the city's biggest public health hazard long before cars arrived to replace them. Superstition, too, has left its scars. In some folklore, horses were seen as omens of death. A pale horse often symbolized the arrival of plague or famine. Even the Bible's book of Revelation describes death riding a pale horse, an image that has haunted art and literature for centuries. But perhaps the most provocative fact is this. Despite thousands of years of reliance on horses, modern society has largely sidelined them. From being the engines of empires to ending up as novelties in sport, show, or food, horses remind us how quickly human values shift. Revered as gods, worked to death, eaten as meat, or celebrated as companions, they've been everything to us. The paradox of the horse is that it reflects us, our ambition, our cruelty, our reverence, and our contradictions. Few animals carry as many layers of myth, beauty, and darkness as the horse. Before we wrap up, let's hit you with a lightning round of horse facts that might just blow your mind. A horse's heart is huge, literally. It can weigh up to 10 pounds, about the size of a basketball. The tallest horse ever, Big Jake, stood over 20 hands high, that's 6 feet, 10 inches at the shoulder. Horses produce about 10 gallons of saliva a day, which means an entire bucket just from chewing. Foals can stand and walk within 2 hours of birth. Imagine if human babies tried that. Horses can recognize themselves in mirrors, a sign of self-awareness that only a few animals, like dolphins and elephants, also show. Some horses even grow mustaches, especially certain breeds like gypsy vanners. Yes, real horse mustaches. And finally, horses have been found in therapy programs worldwide, helping people with anxiety, PTSD, and disabilities. For all their power, they also bring healing. So, what does all this mean? Horses are more than just animals we ride, paint in art, or watch in races. They're mirrors of humanity, wild yet tamed, strong yet fragile, mystical yet real. They've carried us into wars, inspired myths, fed us, healed us, and even entertained us with their quirks. Few creatures on Earth have lived so close to our hearts, yet remained so mysterious. And maybe that's the greatest lesson horses give us. That beauty and power can live side by side with vulnerability, and that sometimes the quietest, most sensitive creatures are also the strongest. If you enjoyed this journey through the strange and surprising world of horses, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and leave us a comment below. Tell us, what's the most fascinating horse fact you know? Or maybe you've had a personal experience with horses that left a mark on you. Share your story, we'd love to hear it. Until next time, remember, the world is full of wonders, and sometimes they're standing right in front of us on 4 hooves.